inakufafanulia katiba nawe jenga nchi yako. Ni wakati wa kujinice na Knice, uielewe katiba nawe jenga nchi yako.
Good morning. Welcome to this edition of KTN Sunrise Live. I'm Edith Kimani. This is the second week of civic education conducted by the Ministry of Justice, brought to you every Tuesday on KTN Sunrise Live with myself, Edith Kimani. Now, this week, we're looking at representation and electoral process. Yesterday, if you watched KTN Prime, we did highlight the U.S. presidential election and the process around it. And today, we're focusing on our own election and the processes around it. And to help me with this discussion, I'm joined by two very lovely ladies. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm joined by Kabuni, who is an advocate, a practicing advocate.
Morning, Edith, and morning, viewers.
And I'm also joined by Mwongera, who is the CEO, Youth Agenda, and Vice Chair of the Non-State Actors. Maybe you'll tell us what exactly your title means.
Yeah. Yes, I will.
Okay, so just based on that premise, realizing that today we're looking at the electoral processes, it's very important to know the structures that currently exist in our government. So perhaps, Lucy, we should begin there.
Yes, most certainly, Edith. Again, for us, we are a Republican sovereign state. Sounds a mouthful, particularly when we also add a multi-party democratic state. But the essence of that is that the people are sovereign. It means also that under Article 10 of the Constitution, we have national values that govern us. And what this arrangement means is that really the people are the bosses. It is not as it was previously, where we celebrated in fact, we used to call them the governors, but now they are servants. And of course, what it also then means is that people must participate freely in the electoral process. And that is why, if they're unhappy with us, if they're unhappy with the people they have elected, they can record them.
Right.
And so that is the essence of the sovereignty of the people.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll come back to the power of the people, because this is something we hear thrown often by especially the civil society. But Susan, to you, Lucy, we're hearing sovereign democracy, sovereign democracy. Just break it down for us and let us know what exactly that means.
You know, I like it, Edith, when you say that civil society has been coming out talking about the power of the people. But the reason why we say it's the power of the people is actually because we are a sovereign state. The power belongs to the people. And that's why when you talk about representation and electoral process, is because, one, it's a political right for every single person to participate in the political process. So in essence, what we are saying is that everyone has the freedom to express themselves in terms of, taking a voter's card and voting secretly and even holding any public office. So it doesn't lock me from actually being a public officer or a state officer, as long as I have the qualities of a good leaders, which we'll likely be talking to about maybe in the next week or so. But the other thing is that within the Article 38 of the Constitution, which is in the Bill of Rights, it also provides for every Kenyan to have to make a political choice. And that's why when you talk about our involvement in representation and electoral process, means that all of us now have the sovereign power to be able to influence the decisions and the outcomes of how we're supposed to be governed. And that's why she said, if we're a republic, then a republic means that of course there will be structures within it that will then make us do business in a better way. And that's why elections are very important to a country like this. But of course, the most important thing is also having free and fair election. And when we talk about free and fair election, is because we want to avoid the power that you've given to the people.
What does that even mean? Sorry, let me just cut you short. What does that even mean? Because seeing as we're going into definitions, that's also a term that is constantly thrown out there, free and fair elections. But what does it entail?
Free means that there will be no political interference in the sense that you're not locking out anyone from expressing themselves. So it's a free opportunity, it's a free environment for everyone. Fair means that the institution that has actually been given the mandate to execute this, and that's the IEBC in this case, are supposed to ensure that everyone gets a fair opportunity. Now, when we used to have problems of IDs not being provided to young people, now it meant that the elections were not fair because you're already locking out young people. But now that's why you're seeing mechanisms in place to ensure that the young people get IDs, they go and get their voters card, they have to vote secretly, because remember now, the fairness also means that you also open it up, you make it secret for everyone to vote. And a peaceful election, of course, is also what we've been promoting, because when there's violence, and you cannot have a credible election. But even the instruments being in place, and that's why I think as everyone has been pushing for the BVR, because it also provides a fair way of ensuring that everyone is actually registered and no one will actually be locked out with the manual registration. So those are some of the things that we talk about when we talk about free and fair, but Lucy might add.
And again, just to add that it's very important that we understand what multi-party democracy is.
Yes.
It means that political parties in this country have now, have now achieved what is called a constitutional status. They are constitutional organs that we didn't have before. And it is not one party, Edith, it is many parties. And again, we need to link that with the Bill of Rights. The right to associate, the right to vote, the right to participate in elections, all of that must be seen together in terms of multipartism. And the fact that within that, we must also look at the participation of the people, even in the political parties themselves. And again, now we even have the institution of coalitions, which we didn't have before.
Right.
So you can see how we have tried to right, the wrongs in our past, when we cobbled up, arrangements, but nobody knew about them. They were cooked in the kitchen. The electorate didn't know. And that is why you can see now there is a frenzy by political parties to put together credible coalitions and to let Kenyans know in advance that this is the coalition that will be looking after your business. So again, it's becoming more and more transparent. And as it becomes more and more transparent, it means that leaders too have to be accountable, because the electorate will and must ask questions.
Okay.
Yes.
But who do they ask these questions to? Because you're talking about the rights, the Bill of Rights, you're mentioning the right to vote, the right to vote secretly. But do Kenyans even take these rights seriously, these powers that they have? Do they, A, take them seriously? And when they are infringed, do they know how to right those wrongs?
Again, as Edith, that is why we have this civic education. And it is not going to be a short-term thing or a medium-term thing only, but also the long-term. I mean, if you think about it, those who were, our young people, when we promulgated our constitution, how old were they, Edith? They must have been 15 going on to 16. Now they are going to be voters. So, and yet we imagine we got the constitution yesterday. But there is a critical mass of Kenyans who need and must know what this constitution says. And that is why we have to keep speaking and telling it and making it part of our daily lives, so that people can know what their rights are, so that if it is, for example, recalling a member of parliament, if it is, for example, filing a petition either to the county assembly or to parliament, then people will know that they have these powers. I mean, they are the sovereign, but we are coming from a past when the citizenry was so oppressed that they forgot. I mean, it's almost going to be a culture change for Kenyans to realize that now the citizen is in the driving seat.
Let me just take this opportunity, because I'm hearing a lot of the things you're saying, and I have like 1,012 questions running into my mind right now. And if you're viewing us from home or from the internet on our digital platform, do send us questions. 8040, that's our SMS number. Remember, the government has provided money so that you can be informed, so that you can get the opportunity to ask these questions. 8040 remains our SMS number. At KTN Kenya is our Twitter handle. If you have any questions about the electoral process, from the jump jump right to the end. And Susan, I'm seeing you jotting notes there, but let me just deviate a little and ask something that Lucy has mentioned. You know, she's talking about recalling members of parliament. She's talking about what to do if you don't think your member of parliament is doing a satisfactory job. Again, I ask, do you think Kenyans understand the power that they have, and do you think they even know how to do this?
Before I actually go into the recall elections, because I think we'll be discussing the different types of elections that we have, because we have the general election, we have the runoff elections, we have the referendum, we also have the recall election.
Yes.
Now the recall elections are very important, but before we talk about recall elections, one, we need to understand that we want to avoid, you know, because the way civil society at times we operate, we are normally very quick to recall someone who has not done a good job. But it's very important for Kenyans to understand that before you think about recalling, you need to ensure that you get the right leaders in place. And that's the most important thing, because you don't want, again, to keep wasting taxpayers' money in having elections to replace someone that you voted wrongly.
Right.
That's the most important thing. But what are recall elections? Recall elections will be done when, as a voter, you feel that your elected leader, I don't know, I keep referring to members of parliament, I think they've been doing a bad job for a long time, until some of us keep thinking that those are the ones. But the recall elections will likely be carried out when a member of parliament loses a seat if found by the court of law to have violated certain things. And that's why, as an advocate, I know she'll be speaking more about this, the leadership and integrity provision, because that's the most important one. You know, if you lose out on that, then you'll have to be recalled by, you know, by your people. But it will be done through a petition. So if, as a voter, you just sit down, you're seeing wrong things happening by your elected leaders, and you're not talking about it, it means that you do not take this thing to court. If you don't take it to court, then the court can't make any decision to stop them from continuing to serve. Again, if they mismanage public funds, resources, because remember, taxpayers pay a lot of money. You know, we're contributing so much.
I know.
you want to be keen on what your leaders are doing to ensure that they actually don't mismanage the funds. And then also, if they are also convicted with any electoral offense, because there are also very many electoral offense, which people need to look at the Elections Act and the Political Parties Act, because that's where you'll find now those specific details in. You might not find them in the Constitution. But if you're found guilty of those three things, then the court will likely have to rule that there will be recall for elections in that area.
Okay, so let's break it down. The three things.
Yes.
The first one?
In terms of if you breach the leadership and integrity provisions,
leadership and integrity provisions,
mismanagement
of
public funds, and also electoral offences.
And electoral offences.
Yes.
Okay.
Or if you're convicted of a crime.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
That is important.
Yes.
But a lot of the Kenyans feel disillusioned when it comes to court processes. They feel, okay, first of all, I simply don't have the time to drag this out for such a long time. I don't have the resources either, and there is an assumption that you need lots of money to keep a court case going. Is this true?
Again, under our constitution now, if you are protecting the constitution, if you wish to file a reference because you are saying this constitution is being infringed, then there is no fee. So that should no longer be a hindrance. And again, something else that something a bit about what Susan said, the fact that this petition will have to be supported by 30% of the registered voters, either in the county or in the particular constituency. And of that 30%, we are saying at least 15% of those must come from the majority of the wards or the constituencies.
Right.
And again, we must now understand that when we talk about our member of parliament, it is not the member of parliament under the former constitution. This member of parliament means the senator. It also means your county assembly member. It also means the member of in the National Assembly. So again, recall will affect all of those positions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And you also can't do it in less than 2 years. You have to allow the person to serve
to
for
settle.
two years,
Okay.
and also not less than before they finish their 1 year term.
Their 1 year.
Yes, so they're all this. And then you also have to you also need the 500,000.
You also need
to file in court. So
I'm listening to all this and I'm thinking it's so much information and there's so many loopholes that one has to go through before a leader, as it were, is recalled. And so I'm thinking, as a person sitting at home, I'd think, okay, it's too much work, just forget about it. But I understand it's supposed to protect the leader, but what happens if a year into their elective term you feel that this is not the person for me, and a whole bunch of you, 30%, as you've said, feel that way? What then? Are there provisions which allow you to recall before then?
I think that's why we are insisting that the most important thing is for you to take time to recruit your leader. You know, I've been telling Kenyans out there, the way we take the process of recruiting, for example, a CEO of an organization so seriously is the same thing that we should actually be doing when it comes to elected leaders. You need to, you know, we are the ones actually who are advertising for the jobs, you know, as far as I'm concerned, as Kenyans, and that's why we are saying the sovereign power belongs to the people. So we advertise for the positions. When we advertise, we're supposed to shortlist. So there are all these candidates, for example, who have been coming in and saying, you know, I want this job to serve you. So we're supposed to, amongst them, we shortlist the ones that we feel are credible enough. Once we do that, of course, it's to vote for them, and that's the process of recruiting. We give them contracts, and that's what we'll actually be doing when we are casting that, you know, ballot vote that day. So we'll actually be saying, this is exactly the person I want in. We'll give them contracts, but we need to remember that we also need to continue appraising. That's why the recall clause is provided for in the Constitution, because of the appraisal process, because you have to keep appraising them. But what we are saying is that because now the Constitution locks us, that you cannot actually now start taking them to court, you know, having petitions in less than 2 years, is because we want people to vote credible leaders even before you start complaining.
Thinking about the recall.
Yes, but then of course, I mean, if you are a member of parliament and you are convicted of a crime and you are put in prison for more than 6 months, for 6 months and above, it means that really, you know, you have to deal. I mean, you would lose your seat anyway. But with regard to the recall, of course, just to make sure that we don't abuse that process, and the fact that, for example, if you lost in the particular election to this, if you were the opponent who lost, then obviously you have reason to want to unsettle the person that won, and that is why you can't be the person who initiates this petition. But again, also, we must remember that electoral politics now have become very inclusive.
Yes.
And I think that is now going to open up the democratic space for us. It is also going to give Kenyans an opportunity to really participate in their governance. For example, you know, one of the principles of representation says that not more than 2/3 of the membership of elected bodies shall be of one gender.
Yes, and
then
of course
in addition to
that,
we've said we must involve those with disabilities, the marginalized must be involved, the youth must be involved, and with regard to the gender rule, of course, we know that for example, the National Assembly must at least have 117 women. And of course, that is the question that is bothering all of us, and we are waiting for that great constitutional amendment, because it must happen. If it doesn't happen, it means that you will have, for example, a National Assembly that cannot transact business. And if it transacts that business, we shall go to the courts and say, first of all, disband this house. In addition to that, any law that they have passed is invalid. That is what it means. So again, as Kenyans, we must also be careful, because again, we are saying we are now going to have very, very many elected positions, which means that in terms of the economy and the finances to support that structure, it's going to be very expensive. So if we don't do the right thing right at the start and elect enough women so that we don't have to have a bloated, you know, house, then it means that we suffer the pain of implementing this constitution, but it is pain that must be suffered, because if we exclude, then it means that people do not even know their rights. That is why they, you know, our Kenyans have always had begging bowls, you know, to their leaders because they believe that they can do it or we are excluded. It is only this family that makes political leaders. The youth have no voice, the disabled have no voice. So I think it's the beginning of great things happening in this country in terms of inclusion and in terms of awareness by the citizenry.
I want to go into the principles of the Constitution a bit further, but you're talking about the beginning, and both of you are really saying this, that it has to start from the jump. You have to elect credible leaders. So let's begin with the general election and how it works. I think we worked our way back. We started with the recall election. So Susan, I know you had started writing notes on that.
Yes, the general elections, I think, is exactly something that every Kenyan knows about. I think the only new thing about the general elections that now we'll also be electing leaders at the county, for the county government, because we have now both the national and the county government. It's actually conducted once in Kenya. It will likely be after every 5 years. So, but there will be 6 positions to be filled. And these positions will directly, there are 2 people that will have to be voted for indirectly. And that's the deputy of a governor and also the deputy of the president. So they will not have a vote on that day, but their names will appear because you will have to run with someone. But the catch is they will actually have to be in that political party. So if, I was giving an example, if Emilio Mwai Kibaki is running and Susan Mwongera is the vice, the deputy.
The running mate.
The running mate is a running mate. If he's in TNA, then I also need to be in TNA. But only if you're an independent candidate, that's when the provision is provided for the 2 of you again to be from different as independent candidates. So the 6th position will be now the president, together of course with the running mate, which is the vice president, the governor with the deputy governor. We'll have the senators. Remember, we need to fill in the 47 senators from each county, the 290 members of parliament, and the county assembly reps. So those are the and I think, these are 6. So those are the positions that we'll be voting. Unlike now before when we were doing only 3 positions. So in essence, actually, that's what the general elections will be about. And that's what we're looking forward to on the 4th of March.
Okay. When it comes to the voting system, obviously this is something that the IEBC has to do with regard to voter education. But just to touch on a little, what happens if there's a runoff? And does a runoff happen only between the presidential candidates, or can the governor aspirants also encounter a runoff?
The likelihood of why it will not work for a governor is because you're not ganging votes from a number of counties in this case.
It's a simple majority.
It's a simple majority. But you see now, for a runoff, why it's for the president is because you have to gang the 50%. And you even have to get at least, is it 24?
25.
In more than half of the counties, that would be 24, and it's 50 plus 1.
Yes, 50 plus 1. So what it means that if that happens and we don't get people who get the 50 plus 1 percentage in terms of the support, then we'll have to have the 2 top presidential candidates then going for a runoff.
And then something else we forgot to mention is about the by-elections, because then that would also resolve the issue of not being able to recall your member of parliament earlier. Because again, if the member of parliament, for example, dies or resigns or misses 8 consecutive sittings of the respective house, which will happen, Edith, if you have been convicted of a crime and sentenced to more than 6 months jail sentence, then it means that you cannot attend to the sittings. And so you obviously are out. Or you leave a political party that nominated you, or when it was that you were elected as an independent candidate, you decide to join a party, a political party, then you will obviously be disqualified. And then there will be a by-election.
Okay. And in the case of the by-election, the same rules apply. I mean, okay, assuming, for example, you are getting into a by-election for the governor, do they then have to have a deputy running with them, or does the initial deputy remain? These are some of the questions that will come up.
Now, I think that's one of the things that the IBC and the court has to keep actually interpreting. I think we actually need to make reference to that, because it's actually not provided. That's why I think we are saying as civic educators that not everything is here. There are things that you'll actually have to make judgment on your food. Because if we need a by-election for someone who needs a deputy, remember that this person was actually coming in to work with you. So I'm assuming, but she's a lawyer, she can guide on that. That's why we have to leave.
I'm just trying to remember. I think the position under county governments was that the deputy actually, I think, will take over. Yes, for the remaining period.
Yeah.
And if I recall well, I should have looked at that provision. I think if he serves more than 2.5 years, then it means that
he should actually continue serving.
He should continue
serving. The only
serving.
time that the speaker can step in is if the deputy is not in a capacity to actually act.
Right.
Yeah. So if the deputy is not able to act, then the speaker will step in and actually take over in terms of ensuring.
And that is why, Edith, we have to be so very careful as Kenyans. We are not just picking. When you pick your presidential candidate, when you say this is my president, you are also saying this is the deputy president, this is my governor, this is the deputy governor. But it also means that these individuals actually, particularly at the county government level, that could very well be your governor.
Right.
So we need to look at both persons. We shouldn't just look at the governor and at the president and be content because we are happy with them. The fact is, if something did happen to those individuals, you could actually end up with a governor, with the deputy governor.
Okay. Yes. All right. Do you have questions? Is this discussion generating a lot of interest? Is it generating a lot of questions? 8040 remains our SMS number. We'll be looking at them in just a short while. And remember, at KTN Kenya remains our Twitter handle. I know that Knice also have a Twitter handle. It's Knice Kenya, if I'm not wrong. At Knice Kenya, yes, that's the one, at Knice Kenya. Do ask some questions through that as well. And the experts we have today are looking through the Constitution. They're going through their material just to try and answer your questions as comfortably and as correctly and accurately as possible. But before we go into a break, the referendum, will they be different? I mean, we experienced it not too long ago. Do the same rules apply? I don't know which one of you wants to take.
They do apply, actually. I think the only unique thing is that there are provisions in the Constitution that you can't change by taking it to Parliament. You actually have to have a referendum, and that's a Bill of Rights. And that's the most important chapter in the Constitution, because you can't change it no matter what. The Bill of Rights, and also I think Chapter 1 as well.
Well, even on the judiciary, and you've had the law, I'm a member of the Law Society of Kenya. You know what we are threatening, Edith? That if the vetting process is not going well, then we will mobilize Kenyans and tell them, now you need to amend this constitution and we need to send all the judges home. And for us to do that, we would have to go to the people. And again, it means that now all leaders have to be really careful, whether you are in the legislature, in the judiciary, or under the executive. Because let me tell you, Edith, you know that it is very easy now to mobilize Kenyans to follow on, to follow up serious issues. And so again, we will have, I believe, many referenda. It means that the president would have to be informed. The petition would have to go to him. Then he would in turn send that to the IEBC,
to the commission first,
to the commission,
and then to the House.
Yes,
then from the House, and then they'll approve a resolution, and then of course now they'll also now give a provision
and then frame. Of course, the referendum question will be will be framed.
But within 90 days.
Within 90 days.
Within 90 days.
Okay. Let's take a break there as we regroup all our papers. I'm also still inviting questions and suggestions through our SMS number 8040. And when we come back, we'll be looking at the qualifications under the Election Act, what that aspiring candidate needs to have before they can clinch that elective seat. That's coming right up. And of course, your questions.
Ni wakati wa kujinice na Knice, uielewe. Katiba na wewe.